Over to you, Mike.
Hi, I'm Michael Wong. I'm the National Vice President of Veterans for Peace, and I'm a member of Chapter 69 San Francisco. I'm also the Vice President of the chapter. And I'm here to talk about Taiwan. I did an interview on the YouTube channel of the Veterans for Peace China Working Group, of which I'm one of the two co-chairs. The other one is Michael Kramer, who's back east in New York. Um, and the interview that I did was with Professor Fu Daiwie, who's a actually retired professor in the island of Taiwan. And he's done an interview with, and he did an interview, he made a statement with four other professors, and he also represents a group of professors who are arguing in favor of a middle way towards peace with China, and also being in a friendly, non-adversarial role with both China and the United States. He's seeking that kind of middle way, which he'll explain at greater length. I thought before we show the film, I might just give a little background history of the whole Taiwan issue in case I think some people might know a lot about it, others may not know so much. So let me just give a very quickie overview. Um, Taiwan has been part of China since it was annexed by the Qing dynasty in 1683. Prior to that, over the course of centuries, or actually thousands of years, there were Aborigines that lived on Taiwan. They were tribal people. They've been there since before recorded history. And then because Taiwan is physically so close to the mainland of China, uh, Chinese immigrated there over the course of thousands of years, and eventually became actually outnumbered the Taiwan Aborigines and became the majority population on the island. And then back, like as I said, in 1683, the Qing dynasty actually formally annexed it and made it officially part of China. Then prior to World War II, in 1895, Japan, this was during the colonial period when China was being chopped up into colonies by different Western powers. Japan joined in, and one of the territories that they seized was the island of Taiwan. They held that island until 1945 at the end of World War II, when it was returned to China. So following that, there was the civil war between the Chinese nationalists and the Chinese communists. The Chinese nationalists were led by the Kuomintang Party, which is where the initials KMT come from. They're referred to usually as KMT for short. Sometimes in English, they're also referred to as the Chinese Nationalist Party. But they overthrew the Qing dynasty prior to World War II, became the government of China, remained the government of China until 1949, when the Communist powers overthrew them, the Communist Party overthrew them. At that point, in the civil war between the two parties, the Nationalist Party lost and retreated to Taiwan. The United States then protected them using the Sixth Fleet, and the situation kind of became frozen like that, just in the same way that, for example, North and South Korea have been frozen as, with separate governments, even though they were originally one country for, most of recorded history. So the constitution of the island of Taiwan is still declares that it is a province of China. Constitution of the Communist Party of China also says that Taiwan Island is part of China, and both constitutions say legally that Taiwan is a province of China. The dispute is over which government should properly rule China. Legally, when Nixon went to China 50 years ago and he recognized the Communist Party of China as the official government, they agreed on the one China policy, which is that both Taiwan and the mainland are considered parts of one nation. When that happened, eventually that transferred over to the United Nations as well, and the United Nations declared that the Beijing government is the official government of China, and there is only one China. They did not make a ruling on the status of Taiwan. Both the United States and the United Nations agreed that who should rule the island is a matter between the Chinese themselves. The United States official position at that time was that they would want China to resolve the issue peacefully, but the United States did not take a formal position on whether or not we would intervene if there was to be a continuance of the Civil War, and if mainland China were to actually make an assault on Taiwan. So that's called strategic ambiguity, which is the compromise that Nixon and Mao made back at the time to change the status to be able to recognize mainland China without actually completely throwing an ally under the bus. And since that time, things have remained frozen on the legal front. Again, the Constitution of the island of Taiwan says that it's part of China and that it's a province of China. And it also says that the official name of the government is the Republic of China. And the flag that they have, of course, is still the same flag under which they actually did rule all of China at one time. So that's remained frozen. But during this time, after the end of the Cold War, trade and relations opened up between the mainland and the island of Taiwan. So that, for example, let me just see if I can find this statistic. Oh, okay, so in 2020, there was 166 billion in trade that went back and forth between the two entities. And there's businesses in Taiwan that have branches on the mainland, vice versa. There's thousands of tourists that are going back and forth over the years. So both the mainland and economically, both the mainland and Taiwan have prospered. So both of them have benefited by the status quo. Polls in Taiwan consistently show that a clear majority wants to maintain the status quo. But like any place, there's a wide range of views within Taiwan, and polls constantly shift back and forth on different nuances of the issue as well as the issue itself, just like it does with issues in a lot of countries. So that gives you a little bit of a quickie background. Why don't we go ahead and show the film first, and then I'll make a few more comments and then take questions. How does that sound?
That sounds great. I'll start that now.
And he's a self-appointed radical intellectual. He's a former distinguished professor of the Graduate Institute of STS, now emeritus professor in National Yang Ming Chiao Tung University. His research areas are science and technology studies, gender and medicine in modern Taiwan, gender and science, East Asian STS, history and philosophy of science, and also history of Chinese science, mainly on Baiji, Mengqi, Baitan, and the cultural history of science in the Song Dynasty. Recently, he extended his research on actions of contemporary radical intellectuals. He published 3 academic books, a few books of social criticisms, and have founded several academic journals, including a radical journal in Taiwan, a radical quarterly in social studies, and several magazines in Taiwan. Ever since the lifting of Taiwan's martial law, He has participated in some social movements and has engaged in social and gender criticisms on and off, but he also had plunged into Taiwan's university bureaucracy structure as Dean of Humanities and Social Sciences for some years. Now he is an emeritus professor, a senior citizen of Taiwan, and is still looking for the next stage of actions and research after a university life of more than 30 years. Professor Fu's current research project since 2021 has been preparing a book on radical intellectuals and their actions, which will focus on two well-known intellectuals, Noam Chomsky and Michael Foucault, with interactive discussions of Fu's own experience as an activist in Taiwan. Through his close readings of Chomsky and discussions with other Taiwanese radical left-wing intellectuals, and also having experienced the critical impacts of American House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan in 2021 and the Russian controversial invasion of Ukraine in 2022, Fu has cooperated with a few friends to draft a 2023 Taiwan's anti-war statement, and they announced it in a press conference on 20 March 2023. Statement heavily criticized the foreign policies of the US in East Asia and its provocations of China in the last decade. And hence, Fu and his anti-war friends are strongly criticized by Taiwan's anti-government DPP party, whose foreign policy is to closely follow the US in its aggression and provocations of China. However, this Taiwan's anti-war movement is also supported by many Taiwanese, and Fu and his anti-war friends are currently working and developing for the movement. Professor Fu, you and 3 other scholars in Taiwan issued a statement calling for peace and putting forth 4 demands. Would you tell our viewers about your group statement, and the 4 demands?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for Mike's detailed explanation of my past career, so to speak. There are 4 friends propose or initiate our anti-war statement held in the press conference this March. 4 of us are all academic professors, okay? But 2 of them have been veterans of the university system. That is, 2 of them are retired, but another 2 are active professors in the current universities. Because of the recent, I think beginning from this year, a group of anti-war demonstrations has taken place in cities from Washington, D.C. and to Europe and many other places. So what we're trying to do is calling for solidarity with their anti-war demands. So we also issue our own set of demands, okay? I'll read our 4 demands and with a little elaboration. First, peace in Ukraine. We call for peace negotiations and the avoidance of conflict escalation. I elaborate a little bit. Russia's invasion of Ukraine is, of course, unforgivable. However, the midterm and long-term factors that stokes the flames of war must be studied. From renowned US academics such as John Mearsheimer, Jeffrey Sachs, and especially Noam Chomsky have all not failed to call into questions and castigate the highly provocative military expansions undertaken by the United States and NATO on Russia's footsteps. Okay, so this is the first we like to say. The second demand is stop US militarism and economic sanctions. Okay, since United States independence, the United States has seemingly never gone a year without launching or participating in a war. Especially in the 2 decades following the beginning of the war in Afghanistan, in 2001, the total amount of funds allocated to the US military budget reached about $14 trillion, of which between 1/3 and 1/2, that amount went directly into the pockets of Defense Department contractors. The war in Ukraine is no exception. In that context, the role of arms industry, commanding formidable resources for lobbying and political contributions, has been especially pertinent. As long as NATO armaments pour into Ukraine, the war will never end. Okay. Now the third our demands is no to the US PRC war. Taiwan should preserve its autonomy and maintain an equal distance from the great powers. The United States and America and the People's Republic of China must resolve their differences through peaceful means. The beautiful land of Taiwan is not available to be rented as a battlefield. We do not welcome the visit of those high-ranking officials who would push Taiwan toward the precipice of war and necessarily sacrifice Taiwan. I mean Nancy Pelosi and others. Okay. Neither do we support the military cooperation that could be manifestly interpreted as a provocation to China. Okay. Especially, Taiwan should maintain diplomatic relations of equal distance with great powers and maintain the security of both sides of Taiwan Straits with a firm policy guided by wisdom. The fourth one, the last demands. The national budget should be used to meet social needs and to mitigate climate change, not for arms and war. Our planet is currently confronted with multiple crises, including energy shortage, inflation, extreme climate events, water shortages, and the disappearances of biodiversity. National budget should be dedicated to the resolution or mitigation of this crisis to improve people's livelihoods, not wasted on the black hole of arms race and mutual provocations. This, the above is our demands of the anti-war statement and a little bit essential elaboration. Thank you.
Thank you. We hear that polls in Taiwan show that a majority of people simply want to maintain the current status quo, which includes billions of dollars of trade both ways across the Taiwan Straits, as well as thousands of tourists and business people going both ways each year. And yet some in Taiwan have called for independence from the mainland, and others have held demonstrations saying that if it's a choice between becoming the next Ukraine or peaceful reunification with the mainland, they would prefer peaceful reunification rather than becoming the next Ukraine. What is the range of opinion on Taiwan these days towards China? And is your group seeking a middle way between the two opposite extremes?
Okay, thank you. Of course, I think about 10 years ago in Taiwan, there are thousands of tourists and students from China, from mainland China to Taiwan, and usually both ways. Okay, but it ceased that way about 8 years ago. Okay, because Taiwan's government has changed, and our politics in the Taiwan Strait has changed very much. So when we talk about status quo, it's an ambiguous notion. In my answering to this question, I will try to say two kinds of status quos in Taiwan that was preferred by Taiwanese poll. Let me talk about the poll first a little bit. Okay, of course, the two extreme positions, as you just mentioned, like that is the outright independence and also the peaceful reunification. These two positions, sorry, the percentage is not high. I think these two totally would account for 30% of the people. 15% for independence and 15% for peaceful reunification. Okay, and the remaining 70% will be called about preserving the status quo. But what do we mean by status quo? Okay, in my opinion, there were two kinds of very different status quo. One is that the earlier one, as Mike, you mentioned that there are many thousands of tourists, the Chinese tourists and the students coming to Taiwan and also to mainland China. That does not happening afterwards. Okay, so the first status quo I'm saying is that about from 2008 to 2016, which is under the KMT government with the President Ma. That is the first status quo, and in that government, their official policy is not unification, not independence, and no wars. They are friendly to China and to US. Okay, so this is the first period of the so-called status quo. Okay, in that period, there are many communications and conversations between the Taiwan Strait. Me myself also went to mainland China to the Tsinghua University to discuss with our colleagues there, and we have very good communications. Okay, and then the second status quo that is starting from 2016 to the current, that is 2023. That was under a new government under the DPP, Democratic Progressive Party, DPP. Its official policy is more or less anti-China. It closely following US and its all aggressions and provocations against China. Of course, it will not for unification. And also it says Taiwan has a de facto independence. So Taiwan has no need to declare independence. Taiwan already has a de facto independence. But this independence, we all know, has no legal status. Okay, it has no sovereignty. It does not according to Taiwan's Constitution of the Republic of China. Okay, so this is, although we thought it's a de facto independent, it is very controversial, and DPP don't want to say much about that. And this is the main challenge of KMT to DPP currently. Okay, so there's these two kinds of status quo. So I would say that about 35 of Taiwan's people are for the first kind of a status quo, that is KMT's status quo, okay, friendly to China and the US. Whereas another 35% of Taiwan's people are more for DPP's status quo, that is closely follow US and its aggressions and provocations against China, okay? Because they believe, those people, they believe that if there's a war, if there's an invasion from China, definitely United States will send troops to Taiwan for help. And also United States will encourage Japan to defend Taiwan, okay? So this is their beliefs. I think there is about 1/4 of Taiwan's population firmly believe that. But many of us, we highly doubted this is going to be a reality. Of all-out war with China from United States, Taiwan, and Japan will be a disaster to all of us, not the least the Taiwan's people. We are going to experiencing experiencing another East Asian Ukrainian war in Taiwan. So that's roughly the situation. And as for Mike, you also asked, is our group that is the anti-war statement group seeking a middle way between the two extremes? I will say a little bit more about this middle way, okay? Because our position is not quite the same as the KMT, okay? I would say our position, although it's roughly like a middle way, but we stated more clearly in our statement 3, that is Taiwan's autonomy and equal distance from the great powers. The equal distance can be explained in terms of the neutrality. Okay, I like to take this chance to stress the neutrality. We like to Taiwan take a neutrality position with respect to United States and China. This is one interpretation of our position. Another interpretation is that some of us saying that maybe Taiwan can go for a confederation position, okay, that is according to the One China consensus. Because in Taiwan, in 1992, we have this One China consensus with mainland China, with CPP, okay? Although this consensus is kind of a vague and subject to different interpretation, but One China policy is being approved and supported by KMT and by some of us. Okay, so this is the two slightly different interpretation of our position of the middle ground. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Our viewers may have noticed that we're having some technical difficulties. There's a typhoon brewing in southern Taiwan right now. And although Professor Fu is in northern Taiwan, it's possible that that's interfering with our reception. But if you would just bear with us, I hope you can at least make out most of what Professor Fu says. Next question. The United States passed bills in Congress to create a porcupine strategy for Taiwan, aimed at dramatically increasing US arms to Taiwan to defend against a US predicted Chinese military assault on Taiwan. American government officials such as Nancy Pelosi have also visited Taiwan, thus violating the One China policy, which has kept the peace on both sides of Taiwan Straits for 50 years. Was the Taiwan government or people consulted before the US developed this strategy? And what has been the reaction in Taiwan to the US, quote, porcupine strategy, unquote?
Thank you. This so-called porcupine strategy has been pretty much discussed in Taiwan. Actually, ironically, this porcupine strategy was first devised or proposed by Taiwan's former chief in staff in the military, okay, Li Shimin, General Li Shimin. He used the word asymmetrical strategy to the war, okay, to the war, okay. However, General Li Shimin has declined it later on, and he has some differences with current DPP government. Ironically, this strategy was picked up by American war strategists and has been proposed and developed, becoming the so-called porcupine strategy. Okay, this strategy, to my understanding, is not really dramatically increased U.S. arms to Taiwan. Okay, Taiwan in the past has already trying to buy a lot of weapons from United States, but many of them the United States won't give to Taiwan. They took the money and saying that, oh, we have been a traffic jam in the weapon exports, and we need to export a lot of weapons to Ukraine, so you have to wait. So we have been waiting many years after weapons we already paid. Okay, this is very ironic. But on the other hand, United States is willing to, according to the POPICAN strategy, is willing to give Taiwan a kind of a light weapons, not kind of a heavy weapons, but light, mobile, sometimes can be carried by individual soldiers and things like that. Those kind of weapons has been distributed to Taiwan in a pretty large extent. So the POPICAN strategy is trying to say that, oh, because China's military is too strong, Taiwan shouldn't be confront China with heavy weapon or long-range weapons to confront in a conventional one-to-one confrontation. Instead, Taiwan should have many lightweight, mobile, distributed, smaller weapons which cannot be destroyed very easily, and on the other hand, it can cause damage to Chinese military invasion. This is the reason of the metaphor of porcupine strategy. It is not so expensive as the heavy weapons. It's less expensive, and so United States actually they bring a lot of this kind of lightweight weapons to Taiwan recently. Okay, so when Taiwan's government and the Taiwanese people they understand this porcupine strategy, Taiwan's government, of course, they know that because our former military chief in staff proposed that, or even invented it as strategy. Okay, so Taiwan's government they adopted that strategy partially, but on the other hand, Taiwan's government still they wanted to buy heavy, expensive weapons. Okay, they still wanted to build our Taiwan submarines and things like that. Okay, so Taiwan's government is trying to do it both ways. Okay, I won't comment whether this is a wise or not, but the important thing is Taiwan's people. Many of them they oppose this kind of porcupine strategy, because the porcupine strategy necessarily involved the inland fight, involved even the street fight in Taiwan. It's very close to the Ukraine war, has been fighting in many cities, street fightings and all that, okay? And that will cause a lot of casualties of Taiwanese people. So many of us, we don't like that. We don't like that. And the question is, who are the soldiers, who are the people they are going to carry out the propaganda strategy? This is not clear. This is not clear. Okay. So there's a tremendous vague area in this strategy in Taiwan. So many people we suspicious about the porcupine strategy, and we don't like that. Of course, we don't like the heavy weaponry strategy. On the other hand, I think from the position of our anti-war statement, from our position, the best way is to avoid the war. The best way we have to communicate with China and the United States. We try to propose our position or resolutions about the potential tensions. This is the best way. Okay. We don't like to put too much emphasis on preparing a war. We like to avoid the war. Avoid the war. Okay. So this is some of our reactions in Taiwan to the U.S. porcupine strategy. Thank you. No, your voice is not. Michael, your voice is not coming out.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
I forgot to unmute myself. My mistake.
That's all right. It's okay now.
Thanks for pointing that out. Otherwise, I would have just gone on. Many in the American peace movement see our country as waging war after war in a very blind and dangerous attempt to dominate the world and break any country that does not bend to our will, regardless of whether it's small countries like Nicaragua, Afghanistan, or Iraq, or large countries like Russia or China. Moreover, many of us in the US peace movement see the US as playing the various nations of Asia against China, just as the US played NATO and Ukraine against Russia, with the aim of breaking or destroying all and leaving the US standing dominant. Do many in Taiwan see the US this way? What is the range of opinion of the US as seen in Taiwan?
Thank you. I think more and more people in Taiwan see U.S. this way, as Mike just stated. Okay, and of course, from our anti-war movement, we gradually influence people to seeing U.S. in this way. And the other part of the opinion is something like, oh, U.S., Japan is our strong allies, and they will defend us from China's evil invasion or something. It doesn't matter what U.S. has been done to other countries before or maybe after. Okay, so this is basically DPP's position. Okay, they think U.S. is their strongest allies and never will betray Taiwan. However, as we all know, that the United States has betrayed Taiwan before. Okay, Taiwan has a former, that is Republic of China, that is Taiwan, a former diplomatic relation with China. No, sorry, with the United States. But in order to renew or to establish the relationship with China, United States has broken the relationship with Taiwan. United States has been betrayed Taiwan before. But the DPP prefer to forget that and not to mention that. And they entirely depend on United States goodwill and strong military strength, okay, against China. Okay, this is DPP's position. Okay, and back to the previous position, that is more and more people seeing United States the way that Mike just mentioned. Okay. And I would say that one major influence or impact of our anti-war statement is to go beyond China's current threat to Taiwan. Okay, of course, we heard all from the news that from time to time, China has made new threats to Taiwan or launched a missile attack, missile crossing Taiwan and things like that. And that caused Taiwanese people be angry. Okay. However, our position is that to go beyond that current threat and to understand or to know the history, to understand why China believes doing that way. And the United States provocation and aggression to China is one major factor. And DPP is closely following Americans' provocation. And that is a major part of the cause of China's threat of Taiwan. That is one position. That is one major position we like to propose or to promote. And that position, we ask for Taiwan's government to rethink our foreign policy, to rethink or to re-establish our communications with mainland China, and to change our position with our United States friends and things like that. Okay, so that's roughly the situation. We should always considering what United States is doing behind the Taiwan Strait. Okay, Taiwanese people has conventionally, when talking about China, we only talk about China and Taiwan, China and Taiwan. That is Taiwan Strait problem. But we propose that it is a triangle problem: Taiwan, China, and United States. Never forget what United States was or is currently doing concerning the Taiwan Strait, and that would much more increase our understanding of the crisis of Taiwan Strait. That is what I believe. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. In the United States, there's been considerable talk from US government officials and military generals of an actual shooting war breaking out and even a risk that it could escalate to the level of nuclear war. And there's a range of views on this in the US. Former Assistant Secretary of Defense and Harvard professor Graham Ellison wrote a book called Destined for War: Can America and China Escape Thucydides' Trap? But Noam Chomsky, a famous professor at MIT, has written many articles and books giving a very different view of the American empire. Do you have any comments on this?
Okay, thank you. I think Graham Ellison's book on the Thucydides trap is published in 2017. And his book has the strength of having rich materials in the past wars in Europe. But its weak point is that most examples are European wars. Okay, very few cases in East Asia. With respect to United States and China, Ellison's book even ignore the important Korean War that is in the middle of the 20th century, which is important because China has been suffered lots of people in that war as a newly established country. And the United States also has been humiliated a little bit because it cannot go over north of the 38-degree latitude. Okay, so I think Ellison's book has some drawbacks in more or less ignoring the East Asian situation and China. Okay. On the other hand, also I think Ellison's book is trying too much emphasize on the so-called zero-sum game. He thinks that between superpowers, there's only one way to resolve that. That is a zero-sum game. Either you win or you lose. Either you conquer or you defeat it, or something like that. Okay. But the situation currently is different. If we backtrack a little bit, before World War II, I think U.S. tends more on foreign policy as a exceptionalism. U.S. has been satisfied in dominating the Western Hemisphere, that is dominating the America, including Latin America, of course. Okay, but after that, especially after the Cold War, the United States has becoming the single world domination power in the world. So I think it's not easy, of course, for Americans to accept the tremendous rise of China, okay, in many ways, okay. So there's a potential Thucydides trap for China and the United States. But what could China do, or what could China propose to do in this kind of confrontation? Okay, I think the issue is complicated. It's not easily can be explained by a zero-sum game. Okay, I think, for instance, like I think Mike Wong also proposed before that because China has a different worldview, has a different philosophy concerning China's position in the world. Okay, which let me think of one famous sentence by, I think, by Xi Jinping, right? He said, the Pacific Ocean is large enough to accommodate China and the United States. Although currently Pacific Ocean is almost entirely under the control of the United States, with the first island chain, the second island chain, and all that. Okay, but I think the issue is complicated. But I can say one more because of the China's restraint in developing their military power. This is from, I think, from Chomsky and some others, saying that China has spent less percent of its GDP to its military, much less than the United States. And China has been maintaining about 1.5% of their GDP on military for the last 2 decades or so. Okay, if you compare with the United States GDP percent for the military, the difference is striking. And so we can see signs of these differences. And moreover, United States has been aggressor and used to invade other countries, either neighboring countries or countries far away since World War II. Okay, but China, on the other hand, they hardly have war with neighboring countries, and also, but not to mention faraway countries. But of course, I should mention, as Taiwan is here, with a caution, that is, China has been not very nice to its subjects and people. Okay, but this is a complicated issue, and it's not the main subject here. We should perhaps we could discuss later in other ways. Okay, so anyway, I think the whole issue is complicated. China is not easily falling into a zero-sum game with United States, but still we have questions for China. That is questions like, can China escape a new Cold War with the United States? Okay, there are many there are books and articles about the coming new Cold War. Can China escape the insane competition of the new liberal capitalism, which has seized the United States for a long time, since I think since the 70s of the last century. Okay, but for the views of Chomsky has much less to say about China's future. Okay, so the question is also how to persuade the U.S. to accept the peace, the non-violent, and how to persuade the United States to step down gracefully from its world domination, monopolar position. And also, plus, there are perhaps the most urgent issues nowadays facing this planet and humanities. That is the urgent matter of global warming. We urgently need the international cooperation, and especially something like, for instance, like a global New Deal. That is, of course, that's proposed by the United States intellectuals, which is good. Okay, so I think we should put much more emphasis on that, which is also our fourth demand of our anti-war statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Fu. Finally, what advice would you have for American peace activists? What things do you think are most important for us in the US to know about the situation in Taiwan? Here in America, the government over which we have the most influence is our own, not the governments of either Taiwan or the mainland. So if we were to address our own government, what message do you think would be most helpful in promoting peace? What would be the main points that you would like us to promote?
Okay, thank you. This is very interesting questions, and I thought about it, and I listed a number of things here, because First is that I think I have 4 points. Okay, first is to have a clear understanding of Taiwanese people. They are complex and not simply depending on a aggressive and military United States. Okay, many of them Taiwanese people are for neutrality and friendship, not anti-United States, and to support them. I think this is one important thing. And the second thing, to the Chinese students and scholars in the United States, okay, the reason I raise this up is that one of the main criticism of our anti-war statement in Taiwan is that we didn't mention the possibility that China itself could also have anti-war movement. Okay, we didn't say anything about that, and so we have been criticized for that. However, we don't have great powers. We don't know how to do this in mainland China. So people who criticize us, we encourage them to go to mainland China and to ask people to anti-war, okay, to speak anti-war. Okay, what we can do at this March, in the press conference, we can only ask for people in Taiwan to becoming aware of this situation and propose the anti-war. However, I will take this opportunity to say something to the Chinese students and scholars in the United States. Okay, that I can do. Okay, no problem. Okay, that is, I encourage you to develop and to promote a narrative of Chinese anti-war position back to China or in the United States, in the circles of Chinese foreign students and scholars. Okay, actually, there are many things to communicate between these two positions, and how not to fall into the trap of the new Cold War with the United States. Okay, and the third thing is that I think to the Veteran for Peace friends and other American people who are sympathetic to the anti-war. Okay, I will encourage you to persuade your government that Taiwan is not a pawn of the U.S. domination in the East Asia. Taiwan is not a so-called unsinkable U.S. carrier in the Western Pacific, okay, or in the first island chain to enclosing China. Okay, Taiwan is not interested, and it's very damaging to Taiwan to take that position, and Taiwan needs to be neutral and equal distances to the great powers. Okay, and the fourth one, okay, I will take this chances to state a few of our visions of Taiwan's future. Okay, Taiwan's future should be as a neutral and peaceful islands, also as a potential bridge for the communication between U.S. and China. I remember some of our earlier intellectuals in the colonial Taiwan periods, people like Jiang Weisui. Jiang Weisui also talk about Taiwan could be a bridge between communication bridge between Japan and China. So currently, I think maybe, I don't know, maybe we can, in addition to Henry Kissinger and other peoples, Taiwan may be becoming a communication bridge for United States and China. And maybe later, Taiwan could be as a Republic of China government within the Confederation of One China, okay, within the Confederation of One China, okay. So this is my perhaps my answers to Mike's the final question. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Chu. I appreciate your spending the time with us and sharing your information and insight onto the situation in Taiwan. And I appreciate your taking time out from your busy schedule. I know you're doing a lot of things. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we'll go ahead and end the program right here. Let's see.
Thank you very much for appreciation for the Mike Wang and and Veteran for Peace China's working group. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I need it cool at night.
Okay. Sorry for that little last bit.
Oh,
Yeah, but
that's
look,
okay.
gotta pay the bills, I guess.
Yeah.
That was a beautifully done interview, Mike. I thank you so much.
That was
Oh,
great.
thanks a lot. There were a few comments that Professor Fu wanted to make afterwards when he thought about it. There were a couple of things that he wanted to add, and I wrote them down in the description of the video below. Would you like me to read some of that?
I think that would be good. We could kick it off from there. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Let's see. So let me see where he starts. Okay. Well, first he wanted to highlight his scholar group's four demands. One is peace in Ukraine. We call for peace negotiations and the avoidance of conflict escalation. Two, stop US militarism and economic sanctions. Three, no to the US People's Republic of China war. Taiwan should preserve its autonomy and maintain equidistant from the great powers. These are his positions. The national budget should be used, when he's speaking of the national budget, he means the national budget of the island of Taiwan. The national budget should be used to meet social needs and to mitigate climate change, not for arms and war. And second, he wanted to elaborate about certain other points. About the question of our, quote, middle ground in question 2, here's some further explanation of this middle group. Roughly middle between outright independence of Taiwan and reunification with China. There are two interpretations of this. One, middle means neutral or neutrality. Taiwan can be a neutral and peaceful island, friendly to China, and not part of the first island chain of the US. When we say the first island chain, how many people here know what we're talking about? Raise your hand if you know what we're referring to. Okay, so some people do and some people don't. Let me finish reading what he says, and then I'll go back and explain what that refers to. So not part of the first island chain of the US, even the Taiwan Strait itself should be neutralized without any military presence of any great power. Some European small neutral countries could be appropriate examples of neutrality with their histories to understand. When Taiwan becomes not a pawn of our link of the first island chain of the US, would it be possible that a neutral island Taiwan should not be such a big problem for China anymore? Of course, the remaining question for Taiwan is that although all these neutrality talk seems fine, is this neutral island also part of Taiwan in the traditional one China policy? Suppose this is indeed an urgent question for China, instead of waiting for another 50 years, then this neutrality position becomes a temporary and transitional position, moving toward a second interpretation of the middle ground. That is, it can be a Taiwan Republic of China, ROC, not really a province of China, but rather an island under a big roof of one China. And let me explain. In 1992 and the following years, there were a series of meetings between Taiwan's KMT government and China. And though it is a subject of interpretations, the two parties agreed then that there is only one China to include both parties. For the KMT, according to the Republic of China's constitution, Taiwan is a part of the Republic of China's China. And for the PRC, the People's Republic of China, which is the communist government, according to the PRC's constitution, Taiwan is a part of PRC's China. Thus, there is this agreement of one China conceptually and geographically. But when the DPP, the right-wing Democratic Progressive Party, came into power, they, of course, rejected the so-called 92 consensus, but no matter. Also this March, former President Ma of the KMT had visited China and explained to many Chinese students what does it mean that Taiwan is part of China under the Republic of China's constitution. And the Communist Party of China had tolerated Ma's explanation, which is a good sign. Therefore, the second interpretation of our middle ground is that we don't go to a confederation of one China, perhaps something like the Commonwealth of Nations. It is not a reunification with China in the conventional sense, although slightly more bending China than simple neutrality. Hence, it is another middle ground position of our demand number 3. So those are the added comments that he would like to make. Let me explain the first island chain. Let me just get a map to show you, and then I'll explain how that works. So if you could put me in speaker view so that people could see this map a little better. Let's see, I'll hold it up here. Okay, if you, let's see.
I can see it, and if people put themselves on speaker view, they can see it too.
Yeah, so if you look at this map, here's China right here. And then you could see that China is surrounded by Japan, South Korea, down through here, Taiwan, and let's see, this is okay. So there's Taiwan, and then there's the Philippines. So basically, what happens is that all of China's trade routes are capable of being blocked by the United States and its allies. That means that if the United States wanted to put up a blockade, they could cut off China's trade by sea, which is a substantial part of its trade. So that becomes critical, either in times of war or in a form of hybrid war. And Taiwan is a critical piece in that chain. If you break any one of those pieces of the chain, it allows an escape route for China's trade to get out and trade with the rest of the world. So that's what he was referring to when he talked about the first island chain. Also, it means that the United States is in a position where they could attack China from all sides of the sea. And then China would only be safe in terms of its northern border with Russia and some of its other borders. So when he says that, when he talks about Taiwan no longer becoming a link in the first island chain, that's what he's referring to. So, any questions?
What was on the next election? My interpretation, what I've been reading, is that they feel this confrontationalist. The funny name is the Democratic. That's why I said, well, you have to get beyond the names, but they call themselves the Democratic, whatever party,
Progressive Party, which they're
the opposite. Yeah. I mean, they should get Madison Avenue involved in this thing. But they,
right.
yeah, but they're actually the most contentious. And my understanding is they feel they'll be voted out of office because a lot of people are blaming them for this rise in tensions and the encouraging of Nancy Pelosi and all these other people to go out there and basically stir the shit is basically the term, like for no good reason. What is the reason? What purpose is being served? And they feel some other friends that knew some people in Taiwan. There was, I believe, the mayor. I don't know if his last name was Ma, but it was basically an older fellow who was in charge of, I think, the second largest city in Taiwan. Had a very different, much more even-handed, kind of going back to the first of the two neutralists, or I forget the term you used, but the parties that were saying status quo. Yeah, the first of the status quo parties. And he felt that maybe that individual or people like him would be more listened to, because basically no one wins in any kind of conflict, much less even a Cold War conflict. You just, as Professor Daiwie mentioned, that we should be concentrating on that. I mean, we're all suffering from the droughts and the heat and the hurricanes and typhoons. We got to get cooperation on that and stop worrying about who's king of the hill, so to speak. Basically, bringing it to a very basic level. The United States is having a really tough time moving aside and letting other people join the party, so to speak. I mean, it seems like we're spending all our time trying to suppress the Russians, suppress the Chinese, suppress Brazil, whoever else they feel is coming up in the world as far as influence goes. And I don't know, have you heard much along those lines?
Yeah, I've actually had a couple of email exchanges with him since the interview, and of course I follow news from multiple sources. You know, in the Chinese community, I know people across the political spectrum. I know people who hate China. I know people who love China, you know, and everything else in between. You know, I have friends who marched at Tiananmen Square, you know, and so I hear a wide range of things, and a lot of people still have family and friends back in different parts of Asia, including mainland China, Taiwan, Hong Kong, you know, et cetera. What's happening in Taiwan right now is the KMT has got 3 candidates running, all of them peace candidates. But on top of that, there's also an independent running on the peace side as well. So that makes 4 candidates to the DPP's 1 candidate. So even though public opinion is very heavily in terms of on the side of peace and maintaining the status quo, look, we're all getting along here. We may not agree on, you know, different things, but, you know, everybody's doing just fine, you know. So even though public opinion is very heavily on the side of peace and maintaining the status quo, because they have 4 candidates running on peace platforms and 1 running on a war platform, there's still the possibility that the war platform could win. So there's a lot of discussion going on in Taiwan right now about how to handle it, and people are saying maybe we should all see who has the best chance of winning on the peace side and just vote for that person, and, you know, regardless of, you know, the merits or demerits of the other 3, the most important thing is to get somebody who's for peace. So that's one discussion. And then there's a lot of different, you know, political wrangling between different sides and different candidates and et cetera. So it's, and in the last election, which was a local election, the DPP made it about war or peace, and they lost tremendously. Virtually all of their candidates lost. So it's very clear what public opinion wants, which is peace. But whether peace is going to win or not, we really don't know.
Have they got like a like we have 2 parties? Are they more of a parliamentary? Whereas
no, they're not. They're very similar to us. You know,
that's a problem.
they wrote their constitution, you know, modeling it after us. And there's a lot of parties, most of which are small. The 2 main parties are the KMT and DPP, just kind of very much like us, you know. But the problem is, you know, between the Democrats and the Republicans here in the United States, there's primaries, and then whoever wins the primary of each party is that party's candidate. Apparently, that's not true there. So that's why the concern is whether the vote on the peace side is going to be divided. So I don't know what's going to happen. You know, of course, we all hope that peace would prevail. You know, China's position, the United States keeps saying China's going to invade, China's going to invade. They always say that. But what China has said is our position hasn't changed. What we want is peaceful reunification, and war would come only if, as a last resort, only if Taiwan were to declare independence. The United States keeps trying to creep up slowly towards that line without making it, you know, without actually declaring it. So the United States is really pushing the limit on the red lines, just like they did with Russia in Ukraine. it's very clear that China does not want war. But if the DPP should win, and if they should become, completely outrageous, would China at some point feel forced to act? Well, we don't know. And we don't know what the election is going to result in, and we don't know what, if the DPP were to win, what would happen.
Cheryl, what do you got?
Well, when you started out, Mike, well, I should say when Professor Fu started out, he said that his anti-war group has 4 demands. And I got the first 2, but somehow I missed the 3rd and 4th one. So if you could tell me in a nutshell.
Let me look at it again. Okay. So number 3 is no to the US PRC, People's Republic of China war.
Hold on.
So basically, no to the US China war. Taiwan should preserve its autonomy and maintain equal distance from the great powers.
Is that the one where neutrality? Taiwan is for neutrality?
Yeah, where there was that.
That's all I got.
Read all those long comments about neutrality. And then 4 is the national budget should be used to meet social needs and mitigate climate change, not for arms and war.
Okay, thanks. Thanks a lot.
And there's a range of views, not only in Taiwan, but also in the Chinese community in the United States. I grew up during, I was born in 1947. I grew up during the Cold War, when the Chinese nationalists were saying, we're going to go back and retake the mainland.
Yeah.
So, so I've always perceived Taiwan as a province of China. I've never perceived it as being separate because, back then the government that the U.S. recognized was the Republic of China, which governs the mainland, and they were saying, we're a province of China. So my personal opinion is that reunification would be a good thing, but not everybody agrees with that. And pending that, we've gone 50 years with the status quo. It's been very stable. We could easily go another 50 years with this, and for me, avoiding a war takes priority over everything else. Ideally, sometime down the road, when both Taiwan and the mainland have evolved, I would like to see reunification on some peaceful grounds. But China's very clear they're not in a hurry for that, and I'm not either.
It's funny. It seems like we are the one causing the issue. Sending people in at inopportune times, and I don't know if there's any underhanded funding of the so-called Progressive Party to gin up the independence movement. Because I clearly see Taiwan as a pawn of the U.S. game. I mean, and I'm glad the professor understands and sees it as well, because Ukraine is being played like a disposable diaper. I hate to say it. I mean, it's so sad. But Chomsky is one of the few intellectuals who I think has been on this program of exposing this for 40 years, the poor guy. And because I remember when the KMT was basically the war, in a sense, the war party. We're going to come back and we're going to be the real China. And now they're the peace party. Now they're the peace party.
Yeah, it's weird the way that all happened. They've become the moderate party. They, and part of it, there's a not a generational, but well, okay, let me just explain it this way. Back during the Qing dynasty, when there were waves of Chinese that both before and after the Qing dynasty officially made Taiwan a province of China, there were waves of Han Chinese that migrated to Taiwan and settled down there. And then they were conquered by Japan and held for 50 years and kind of brainwashed by the Japanese. And then after the Chinese Civil War in 1949, when the KMT retreated to Taiwan, they became a new wave of Chinese immigrants. And the old wave of Chinese immigrants who had basically controlled Taiwan up to that time resented them. So they're more towards the old population is more towards independence, and the newer population tends to be more towards reunification because they see themselves as, Chinese. So there's a whole kind of set of people in Taiwan, many of whom are from the old wave of immigration, the ancient wave, who refer to themselves as Taiwanese. And Professor Fu is actually part of that wave. His family comes from Fujian province back in ancient times. So you hear them refer to themselves as Taiwanese. That has its own set of problems because then there's the Taiwan Aborigines that I referred to earlier. They're the true Taiwanese. The Chinese who came even in ancient times, they speak Chinese. Chinese is his native, Mandarin is his native dialect, our Fukienese is native dialect followed by Mandarin. So for them to call themselves Taiwanese would kind of be like a white person in America claiming to be Native American. So there's that discrepancy. But on top of that, there is a social and historical difference between the two waves of Chinese that came earlier as compared to the ones who came later. So it's a very complicated kind of situation.
Well, now within those groups, like we have here, a lot of them join one party or another party. Like they don't stay bifurcated along those particular lines. Right after, I think, a generation, you find intermarriage and cultural things that are unique to Taiwan itself in the later days tends to blend a lot of that stuff. So you would think those become less and less important in the overall scheme of things, but that's why I'm thinking as time goes by, it's going to solve itself in a way, you would think, if people just let it happen.
I think if enough time went by and there was a stable peace, that might happen. But it's kind of like, how people in the South, there are people who see themselves as rebels and, Confederates, and there are times when that rebelliousness kind of dies out. And then there's other times when you have political divisions within the United States and these things become heated, sources of argument again. And, people who may not have given it much thought earlier somehow, get agitated and say, oh, but I'm blah, 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 whatever. So these things kind of rise and fall in Taiwan, just like the things do in the United States or anywhere.
I just hope they're conscious of the fact that we're playing them, like they're a toy. And the more they see that and understand that, the more they'll be willing to say, let's stay that central path. Let's not get sucked into everything the US does is good, everything Chinese does is good, whatever. So I'm just hoping that we can keep our damn hands out of the mix and let things consider like in our country. I mean, you've had periods where there's been kind of calm. And right now you got a period where we're bordering on a civil war. And so it's just something we peace advocates have to really dwell on, I think. And that's got to be our message, is to stay the hell out of other people's problems, in those respects.
Right. I mean, all kinds of divisions exist among people everywhere.
Yeah.
But the United States, and there are valid issues that different groups and different countries have, of course, but the United States doesn't really care about those issues in and of themselves. They just want to manipulate them. And there was a question earlier about whether the United States is helping, the independence people in Taiwan. I think they are. I mean, there's Voice of America, which puts out propaganda all the time. There's the NED, the National Endowment for Democracy, which gives like millions of dollars every year to all sorts of movements, in Taiwan, in Hong Kong, in mainland China, spreading, discontent and fanning the flames of conflict. Let's see, I see that Cheryl has her hands up.
Oh, yeah. The discussion about Pelosi, for example, going to Taiwan, I see that as pure aggression, deliberate aggression. And I mean, to me, it's just so clear that like the US is trying to pick a fight with China, and
Right.
the motives we've always had is to dominate and use other people's resources at any cost. So
Yeah.
Right.
that should be clear to everyone, I think. Let me know if I'm on the wrong path.
Well, you're not.
I mean, Professor Fu made it very clear that that is his view, and that in fact it's the view of a majority on Taiwan. But again, the politics are complicated, and because of the division among candidates in the peace camp, it throws everything up in the air.
Cynthia, what do you have for us?
Well, you picked my favorite subject, Nancy Pelosi. I've been following her
That
ever
got you
since she.
spoiling, huh?
Yeah, yes. Ever since she stood up to Trump, she's my favorite girl.
Well, that part's good.
Yeah. So, I did hear a full presentation that she did with an interview about that visit to Taiwan, and she looked at it from the perspective of, if you were Taiwan and you were getting bullied, wouldn't you want your allies to show up and reinforce the fact that they're there for you? And I could, having been in that situation myself a lot of times, even as an individual, when you're being bullied, it's really nice when someone comes and stands alongside you. But I agree with the other folks at the, looking from a distance and just observing without further information. It was, I kind of thought, well, dang girl, but, it didn't look quite the same as how she explained it. And I think, she comes across pretty genuine to me. I know she's really, a master politician, but that's my 2 cents worth. I wanted to throw it in since I had something to say.
No, you can't take that away from her, that she's did a very good job as speaker and handling AOC and the squad. And I give her a hell of a lot of credit for being able to keep that thing together. Look what the Republicans can't do it.
No, man, she's looking better every day, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
she was on TV last night with a big interview that had been scheduled prior to all of this other speaker business and Israeli business. Yeah. And she basically was a platform for her to campaign. But if you catch it on KQED, you might enjoy it.
Okay.
There
Yeah,
and there you have
China, and she's always been down on the Communist Party of China. But in this case, it wasn't really China that's been bullying Taiwan. It's really the United States that's been trying to push Taiwan and use Taiwan as a pawn, just like Mike said about comparing it to Ukraine. So in this case, it wasn't so much that that may have been her perception that she was standing up for her friends, but in this case, she was really throwing gasoline on the fire and fanning the flames. It would be like, if you were having an argument with somebody and somebody stepped in and escalated the argument rather than calming things down.
Right. good point. Anna Loy, what you got for us?
Well, I was just, my impression of Pelosi's action was that she went in sort of a state of defiance, that she was very strongly recommended not to go by the State
Yeah.
Department and other people. So she didn't seem to have gone there with quote government sanction. Am I misunderstanding that?
No, I heard that too. So,
No,
Oh,
that's-
that's actually correct, yeah.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. yeah.
Okay,
Well, let's
I'm
just
not on
hope
camera.
for the best and hope she gets herself better schooled on what the hell's going on over there and not become a problem rather than going as a friend. I mean, unfortunately, I think she caused a lot more difficulty than if she had not gone. And I'm sure that's going to make her feel bad, but it's kind of a reality. Maybe one more comment. It's almost 9 o'clock-ish. We usually don't try to keep people much beyond this, but I'm perfectly happy to hang out, but I just want to let people know that we usually terminate a reasonable hour. So any other?
Yeah, I'll just comment
Yeah.
that the Chinese community reached out to her and she would not talk to us.
Oh, jeez.
Anyway,
Could
go
I
ahead.
make, can I make one more quick comment?
Yeah, sure.
For some reason, the link for the meeting tonight was not highlighted. And that's why I came so late, was because I had to go through all sorts of machinations. So I sent you an email about it. I don't want anybody else had problems getting in with the
Well,
link.
I will make sure that we get one that's more visible next time.
Okay, yeah.
Well,
Thanks,
it
Anna Lloyd,
wasn't,
for
it
letting me
wasn't
know.
it wasn't highlighted, it wasn't
Yeah.
underlined. So,
It
I
wasn't in
do
blue.
know.
It
I
wasn't
know
blue. then.
exactly
It
what you mean.
no, it was blue, but it
Mm.
wasn't underlined and it wouldn't click,
I gotcha.
And-
Because
and so
usually if you have that problem, you just copy it and
I-
put it in the browser like a new item.
I did that and
Really?
it was very convoluted.
Oh,
Really?
okay.
Oh.
And I just sort of accidentally stumbled on a way to,
Well, we're glad
they
you.
were asking for a password and all sorts of.
Oh,
Oh,
but
no.
no. Okay, well,
Anyway,
thanks for telling us so we can
Yeah,
fix
yeah,
that.
we'll see if we can correct that.
Mm-hmm.
Did you miss very much of the talk or? Because we could probably send you, because usually what Ron does is he makes a YouTube out of it and we'll put it in our website and you can just watch the whole thing that we've recorded.
okay, because I think I missed about at least a half an hour, 40
Oh.
minutes.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was recorded. It's still recording.
Oh, okay.
That's true. I should turn it off. All right.
Okay, you can turn it. Well, some of our brilliant Q&A,
Yeah.
All right.